All right. So so I'm going to be talking about Svelte. So let's look into, by the way, before we start, has anyone used Svelte before or has worked with Svelte or heard of it at all? Okay. Okay. A couple people. All right. So our agenda for today is basically do a quick Svelte kit overview. And then I'm also going to go into a mini Svelte kit workshop. So you can actually follow along if you want. I'll go a bit fast because I don't have that much time, but if you want to go ahead and try that too. So you can go to weblab.is/svelte to see the repository that I've created, which has the source code for the example app that we're going to be making, as well as some resources that if you want to learn more about Svelte. But essentially, what is Svelte? I haven't even mentioned what that is. So Svelte is essentially a lightweight component-based web framework developed by Rich Harris. And by now, you probably understand what most of these terms are. So component-based means we use components within our app development. Web framework being frameworks like React, Angular, Vue, if you've heard of any of these. So you can see Svelte as kind of an alternative to one of these. So why do people like it? So in 2022, Svelte was actually voted the second most loved framework across all of developers according to Stack Overflow, beating out React even, as well as being the framework that most developers wanted to learn. And there's a few reasons why people like it. First of all, it's what's known as a compiled framework. You don't have to understand the specifics about this, but what this does is it actually creates a very small bundle size, as opposed to React's a very large bundle that has a lot of features and functionality. But what this allows Svelte to do is it allows it to be very lightweight and very fast. And another key thing that people like about Svelte is that it's really, really easy to learn and get started with. Whereas React, as you might have seen going through our React workshops, there are some things in React that are a bit hard to learn, like hooks, like use effect, things like that. So some more comparisons. Components, again, Svelte is still made up of components. Svelte components look more like regular HTML files. So if you remember way back to workshop one or day one learning HTML and CSS, Svelte components look more like regular HTML files, whereas React uses more JavaScript and JSX and things like that. Next, I'm going to be talking about Svelte Kit, which is actually going to be what I'm working with today. So Svelte Kit is a meta framework that allows you to use the Svelte component library to create full stack projects very easily. So this is very similar to Next.js, and we're actually going to have a lecture on that tomorrow. And what Svelte Kit does is it adds many features required in modern web applications, and it has them built in. So it has things like routing, data fetching, server-side rendering, environment variables, things like that. Okay, so now I'm going to actually go through the walkthrough. So if you want to follow along, again, don't feel like you have to. I'm going to be going pretty fast. You can clone the repo that I have here at weblab.is/svelte. And you can check out, you can CD into the Svelte workshop library directory, and then check out step 1. And so what we're going to be making is basically just a very simple comments app. So we're going to have 2 pages. We're going to have home and comments. And for the comments page, we're going to have a bunch of comments that we can add and put in a feed here. And we can even delete those comments as well. So hopefully I have time to implement all of that. So let's take a look. All right. So I'm actually going to skip this step for the sake of time. But essentially what you can do is you can basically run this tool here. This command line tool that SvelteKit has provided for us. And we can basically just create a SvelteKit project from scratch. No need to clone any external repo or anything like that. So the way that we can basically get caught up to this is by going into the workshop code, and we can check out step 2. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the dependencies. So npm install. And then the other command that I'm going to do is npm run dev. And you'll notice that this is a single command that we need to do. There's no need to run anything like npm start or or npm run hot loader. It's just one command that starts both a server and a client. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is basically just take a look at this website here that we have. So if we refresh our local host, and you'll have to go to localhost 5173. That's the port that SvelteKit decided to use when they created this. And you should be able to see something like this. All right. So for step 2, we're going to create a very simple counter and kind of understand the overall setup for Svelte. So the first thing that we can do is install the VS Code tools that allow us to code with Svelte. Then we're going to understand the basics of Svelte components. And then lastly, we're going to create a simple counter app and kind of compare that to React and see how Svelte is actually a lot cleaner and a lot simpler to understand. So Svelte officially recommends using this extension, Svelte for VS Code. So if you search that up in the extensions, you should be able to find it pretty quickly. I think it has like 1 million installs, and you can install that there. And then what you can do is you can open up the source folder here. You can go into routes, and you can go into page.svelte plus page.svelte here. And you should be able to see this code here with a bunch of syntax highlighting if you have that extension installed. And you can see here that this code, it looks like just regular HTML. This is what's being rendered here in our local host. And if I change something here, let's say I just remove this. Let's say I want to make it cap loader for whatever reason. It'll automatically update when I save the file. Okay. All right. So next, let's go over the component basics. So there's three parts. If you remember way back when, again, from day one, there's 3 parts of any website. There's logic, there's the markup, the HTML, and then there's the styling. So first there's the logic. Logic will go in the script tag. So you can see here there's a script tag, and you can write any JavaScript in here. So to create state, we're going to use the let keyword to just automatically create state as if we were making any normal variable. Styles go in the style tag. So this is just any CSS. And what's important to note is that styles are scoped to work only in the component that they're written in. And then lastly, markup HTML goes anywhere outside of these 2 script and style tags. And the nice thing is that we can, like JSX, we can use brackets to include non-HTML or JavaScript code. And so this is basically just like JSX. And we'll see that in the code. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and demo how to create a simple counter app. So you're going to find that this is pretty straightforward. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just call this the home page here instead of this title. Oops. Let me delete this paragraph tag. And let me create a script tag so I can create some state. And I'm going to say, let's call it count. And I'm going to say let count equal 0. So that's pretty much all we need to do to create mutable state in Svelte. We don't need to use state. We don't need to import anything. That's all we need to do. And okay, how are we going to update this counter? So let's create a button. Let's say click me. And then let's also render a H3, for example, to display the count. And you'll notice that this is pretty much exactly the same as React so far, where we're just displaying the count in brackets. Now, to update the count in Svelte, the way we do this is instead of using onClick, we use on::click. And we do the same thing as in React. We pass in a callback function. And so how are we going to update the state? Well, in React, we'd have to use the state setter. We have to take in the function, set count or something like that and call that. In Svelte, it kind of is just magic. We can basically just do count ++, and that's all we need to do. So let's take a look at our code. And you'll see that when you click the button, the state automatically updates. So that's pretty much all we need to do to make a simple counter. Okay. And so you can kind of see that if we compare Svelte to React, on the left is our Svelte code, right is React. In React, we had to import a bunch of stuff. We had to create some functions. We had to create the actual function component here. we had to call the set count function to update state. In Svelte, it's a lot cleaner. We only have to, declare this variable here as any JavaScript value. And we can just say count plus plus. There's no need to say set state, set count, or anything like that. So it's really clean. And this is a big reason why a lot of people like using Svelte. It's very popular for that reason, for its simplicity. Okay. So next I'm going to talk about file-based routing. So this is kind of equivalent to using, say, React Router or Reach Router, as we learned in a previous workshop. And so for this, we can check out step 3 if you'd like, if you want to catch up. Also note that sometimes if you created files, you might need to use the -- force command if you run git checkout. Okay, so let's talk about file-based routing. So here we're going to understand file-based routing with pages, and we're going to add a new page. We're going to add a comments page. So the way that SvelteKit structures routing is it basically uses what's known as file-based routing. And what we do here is we basically create directories within this routes folder, and any plus page.svelte files that we put in those folders will be rendered out in the website as actual routes. So for example, this page.svelte file directly under the routes folder will be rendered at the URL, so example.com. Whereas if we create a folder, comments, and put page.svelte in there, it'll actually render out at /comments. So that's like super simple. There's no need for any separate routing libraries. So let's see how to do that. So let's go ahead and add a new page called comments. So if we go into our code, we can go into routes, and we can add a new file. We can put it under comments, and let's call it plus page.svelte. And let's add an h1 tag, and let's say comments. Okay, so going back to our website. Now, if we go to comments, you'll see that the comments page is rendered. So that's very simple. No need for any libraries or anything like that, extra components. We've literally just added a new file in another folder, and SvelteKit automatically figured out what to do with that. So that's super nice. Okay, next, let's go ahead and add a nav bar so we can easily navigate. So if you want to catch up to this step, you can run these 2 commands, again, using -- force if necessary. So we're on step 4. Okay, so let's talk about file-based routing with layouts. We're going to add a navbar component and also add a global CSS file. So the way that file-based routing with layouts works is that if you create a file called +layout.svelte and you put in any content inside of this file, the content that's in this file will be rendered across all the different subcomponents, all the different sub-routes, essentially. So for example, if we added a navbar component here, it would be rendered not only in root example.com, but it would also be rendered at /comments. So that's kind of what we want for our navbar. And another special thing here is a slot tag, which basically tells Svelte that we want to display the content of the other routes in this. So this kind of like encapsulates every single subcomponent that might be within our other pages. So let's just look at how to implement that. So let's go ahead and add a navbar component. So in the documentation, Svelte recommends putting components in the lib folder. So let's go ahead and do that. So in lib, let's create a file called components. And let's call it plus, or no, we're going to call it navbar here. Svelte. So let's create a simple navbar. So I'm just going to create some quick HTML here. I'm going to say home. And here I'm going to say comments. Okay. And I'm also going to add just some quick styling here. So I'm going to say UL. And remember that because Svelte scopes the style to the specific component, it will basically, we can basically do this by just referencing the HTML element. So let's go ahead and just give this a little bit of styling. Display flex. Let's do justify content space evenly. And let's give it a background color, just a random blue. Okay. Now to render this navbar, let's create, as we mentioned before, the layout file. So I'm going to go to routes and I'm going to add a plus layout.svelte. And you might see in your terminal that there's going to be an error because we don't have a slot tag to render all of the other content. So I'm going to create slot. And if we go to our website, you'll see that right now we basically just have the exact same thing as we had before. But if we go ahead and create the navbar element, and one thing I'm going to need to do is actually import this. So I'm going to create a script tag and import it as well. I'm going to import navbar. Now we'll see that the navbar has appeared at the very top. So we have the navbar at the top, and underneath it, as we specified, we have slots, which will render any components in that subroute. So here we have the home page. And how do we actually like add the links to the other routes? So if we go back to navbar, you might have noticed that I didn't actually fill in these hrefs. So how are we going to do that? So in React Router, we had to create custom link components. In Svelte, we can just use the plain old anchor tag, this a tag here. So I'm going to put slash for home, and I'm going to put slash comments for comments. So let's see if this works. So if I go to home, I go to home, comments, it'll automatically update without refreshing. So that's super nice as well, super clean. Yeah, much faster and easier than React in my opinion. Yeah. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the navbar. The last thing we're going to do here is add a global CSS file. I'm probably just going to skip this as well for the sake of time. But essentially, you can add a global CSS file to the layout.svelte file, and it'll be applied to all of your components. So I'm actually going to do this here. I'm going to reset hard and check out step 5. Step 5. I'm going to use -- force as well. Okay. So you should be able to just see our navbars we had before. We have home and comments, and there's just been some global styling that's been applied by checking out this step. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is props and loop rendering. So again, these should all be familiar concepts to you. So props, we're going to understand props. We're going to create a comment component. Again, this is a very generic templated out comment component. We're going to do loop rendering, and we're going to render those comments using loop rendering. So props, they're very similar to props in React. So the way we pass in props is using the attribute prop name equals prop value. So you can see an example here in parent.svelte. We have the component, and we pass in the prop, in this case, name. For taking in props, that's a little bit different than React. Svelte actually uses this syntax here, export let prop name in the script tag. It's a little unintuitive, but that's kind of the syntax that the Svelte designers chose. And so we basically just say export let prop A, and that'll automatically take in any props that are passed in from the parent. And again, by referencing those props in the markup, we can just use the brackets. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a generic component that represents individual comments. So as you remember, components go into the components folder here. So I'm going to create a new file, comment.svelte. And I'm going to just create, I'm first going to pass in the props. So if I go back here, I say here that the comments can have an ID, user, title, and body properties. So I'm going to actually create those as props. Export let title, export let user, and export let body. And I'm going to render this out in our markup. So let's create an article. Let's create an H3 that represents the user. Let's put it in brackets. Create an H2 that represents the title. And let's create a paragraph tag that represents the body. Okay, so this should be our custom comments component. But we can't really see what this looks like yet because we don't have the data for it yet. So we're going to have to go into the parent and add in some stuff. So the way we're going to do this is with loop rendering. So in Svelte, the way loop rendering works is using the special syntax. Unfortunately, we can't use the map functionality as in React. We have to use the special syntax. Essentially, you use this each block. So it's yeah, I guess this hashtag each. You put in the name of the array that you're going to iterate through. You give it a name for each individual item, and you can even include a key. So in the brackets here, in the parentheses here, and then you have to close it out here at the bottom. So let's go ahead and render a list of dummy comments using loop rendering in the comments page. Okay. So let's go into comments and back into routes. So here we're in the main page file. And so let's create a script tag to create this list, this array of dummy comments. So I'm going to say let comments equal array. And I'm going to create just a temporary comment. So I'm going to say ID is 0. I'm going to say user equals weblab. I'm going to say title, hello, body, yay. Okay. And then I'm going to use loop rendering, as we saw in the previous slide, to render out all these comments. Again, this will only be one, but let's just still use loop rendering in this case. So I'm going to say each. And the nice thing about the Svelte extension is that it can auto-complete this for us. So we type this here, we can enter in the array name. So we have comments, and I'm going to call it comment. And I'm going to use the ID as the key here. So I'm going to say comment.id. And then here, let's use our custom comment component that we made. So let's wrap this here. And let's make sure to import it. And you'll see it'll get imported here at the top of our script. And let's pass in the props. Now, you notice that we had 4 different props in comment. Now, we could pass them in individually, but one neat thing that Svelte allows us to do is basically destructure this object here and just automatically pass in all of that as one. So I can use the spread operator, these 3 dots, and comment. And so hopefully, if I did this correctly, we should be able to go into our website, go to comments, and we can see a little comment here. So we have the username, we have the title, and we have the body. Okay, I skipped the styling, so I'm actually just going to check out step 6. That's all we need for step 5. Let's see. I'm going to reset --hard, check out step 6 course. Okay, so let's see what it looks like with the styling. Okay, so we've rendered a nice little card around that. And that was basically done, again, by just using the style tag within Svelte. So I created a background color, some padding, some border radius, and margin. Okay. All right, 8 more minutes. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually convert this into this local state into a global store. So this is going to be a new concept that we're also going to be covering more tomorrow. So we're going to understand what a global store is. We're going to create it, and then we're going to replace the local array with that global store. So just to quickly introduce this, again, you don't have to understand this completely. We're going to be talking more tomorrow if you're interested. But traditionally, the way that we pass data is by taking in state from a parent component, this root component at the top, and passing it down to the individual components one by one. So, and some of you might have already noticed this in your projects, but if you have a lot of components and state that needs to be shared across all those components, having to pass them all down as props can be pretty tedious. Instead, with global stores, we kind of take that all out of the component tree and put it into this kind of global structure here, which we can access directly from each individual component. So let's say we had a user state that represented the user that's logged in. We can actually put that in the global store and just pass it directly to the components that need it. And similarly, the components themselves can update them. So no need to pass in the props and pass them down through each individual components. We can just take them directly to the components that need it. So that's super helpful when we're writing when we're creating a large app with lots of data. So I'm going to skip this. I'm running low on time. So I'm just going to create a global store for the comments data and replace that with the replace the local array that we made here with that store. And I'm probably also just gonna skip that as well. I'm gonna check out step 7 to see how we did that. So what I did here is I created the store here. You can see that I created it using this writable function that Svelte provides to us. And it has basically the same thing that we had before. We had a dummy comment that we wanted to render. And in the plus page.svelte, where we render the comments, instead of the state that we had, I basically imported this comment store. And I'm using it now using this $sign operator to render out the array of all these different comments. So you can see you won't see any visual changes when you convert it to a store, but you can see that it works just the same. Okay. So I'm going to actually now add new comments using this global store. So we're going to understand updating the stores and binding inputs. And so with that, we'll be able to create a new comment form that adds new comments. So the way that I can do that is by calling this update function from the store. Again, you don't. I'm going really fast, so you don't need to understand the specifics about this. And then I'm going to create a form that will update that store and add new comments. Okay. So let's go into page.svelte. And at the top here, I'm going to create a simple form. I'm going to say form. I'm going to create an input box. That's going to be type text. And then I'm going to create a button that says new comment. And we should be able to see this in our website. So we have a simple form that says new comment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to keep track of the current thing that the user has typed in, and I'm going to save that as state. So I'm going to say let new comment title. For simplicity, I'm just going to allow users to create comments by only changing the title. So new comment title is empty string. And in Svelte, the way that I can connect the input here with this state is by using the bind value property here. And I'm going to bind the value of this input to the new comment title state. Okay. And as you can see, when I type things in here, it'll get saved in a state, and then we can use this to create our new comments. All right. So what I'm going to do here is on submit value on submit. I'm going to create a function called add new comment. And let's create it up here in our script. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dummy comment using this new comment title. I'm going to give it a random ID. Say just math.random. This is bad practice, but yeah, just for this workshop. I'm going to give it the title of new comment title. I'm going to give it a just dummy user, so web lab, and a dummy body as well. Hello. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the comment store and update it using our update function. So I'm going to call update. And what update does is it takes in the previous value of the store and it returns, and we can return the new value that we want to do. So we can say, let's say new comment, oops. New comment dot concat the previous value. So the previous value is the array of comments we had previously. And I'm going to remember also to clear the current input that we have. So I'm going to say I'm going to just say new comment title equals empty string again. Okay, so that was really fast, but let's see if we manage to get that. So if I say hi and I press enter, you'll see that the new comment has been successfully added to our data, and we can actually see it in our feed now. And we can do this as many times as we want. Oh. And we'll have a bunch of comments being updated automatically. So that's good. So I'm really low on time. I just want to show you so the next step I would do is delete comments. So that's another thing that we can do. This is similar as before, where we're using the global store and we're updating it to filter out the specific comment that we want to delete using its ID. But the last thing I wanted to show, which I think is pretty cool, is that SvelteKit comes with built-in animations. So you don't have to import any external libraries or anything like that. So and it just works really well. It's almost like magic. So I'm going to actually animate a comment when it's created or deleted. And the way that I'm going to do that, it's really simple. So I'm going to check out step 8. Oh, I need to reset hard. Check out step 8. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to comment.svelte. And I'm going to say in the root element here in this article, I'm going to say transition. So that's the custom property that Svelte has defined for us. And I'm going to use any a specific transition function that Svelte has defined for us. So if I import from Svelte transition, I should be able to see here. Oh, let's see. Oh, I guess it's complaining because I have this. But you should be able to see that there are a bunch of different types of transitions we can use. So I'm going to use the fly transition. Let's see. I might have done something wrong here. No, I think this should be right. And what I'm going to do is basically tell it to fly in from the left side and move into the right. So I'm going to do that by setting x to -200. I don't know if I'm getting an error here. 1 second. Okay, let's just hope this works. Okay. So I'm going to add a new comment. And okay, so it works. So you can see here that with the transition that we imported from Svelte, we don't have to add any extra, fancy code or libraries to do this. We can basically just create this transition property and apply it to our elements, and we can and it'll automatically figure out all that animation stuff for us. So I can say, wow, it'll fly in. And I guess I didn't check out the previous step properly, so I'm going to reset dash. I'm just going to go to the complete branch so you can see kind of the full demo. Yeah, so we can basically just add new comments and they'll fly in. And even when you delete the comments, you'll see they'll fly out. It kind of just does the opposite. And I didn't have to add anything else. You can see here that it's basically the exact same thing that I had before, but it's automatically added these nice little transitions for us. And the last thing we can do also, I didn't show the code for this, is we can animate between pages automatically. So you'll see here, when I go to home, it does a nice little animation that kind of just fades out and moves a little bit when I switch between the pages. So yeah, that's basically all there is to Svelte so far. There's a lot. There's a lot more. You can also integrate backend stuff, fetching data, things like that. But I just wanted to run through this quick preview of Svelte in case you wanted to try using it for your project. Yeah, that should be all. Thank you.